City Council has been consistent in championing a budget that invests in New Yorkers. During last year's budget process, we worked alongside residents across the city to fight hard to restore library service, protect child care, and educational programs, along with other critical services New Yorkers rely on. We also secured major housing investments at a pivotal time when our city faces a daunting housing crisis that demands greater resources and actions to address. There is far more at stake this year with a destructive force in the White House that is attacking working families in our city and throughout the country. The Council's preliminary budget response lays out a balanced, responsible, and forward-thinking path for our city and New Yorkers to achieve stability. Our investments are focused in several areas that respond to some of our city's most significant challenges: NYCHA and affordable housing, 3K and other early childhood programs, our public schools, CUNY, mental health solutions, programs that reduce recidivism, our parks, cultural institutions, libraries, and other vital services for New Yorkers. When we meaningfully invest in our communities and prepare the city for the chaos coming from Washington, we can create a future where we all thrive and no one is left behind. Our goal as a government is to serve the public and improve the quality of life for the people we serve and represent. Trump's never-ending stream of chaos, which includes the recent gutting of the Department of Health and Human Services and its Head Start and child care offices, runs counter to that purpose. The Trump administration also managed to do the unthinkable, slashing funding to the World Trade Center Health Program that provides care to tens of thousands of first responders and survivors of the health impacts from 9/11. Trump's cuts dishonor the thousands of New Yorkers we lost on 9/11, our brave heroes and survivors. They continue to suffer from debilitating health impacts, and they deserve our government's support. Though there are reports that some firings and cuts were reversed, others have not been. None of this was necessary. In just 3 months, Trump has managed to make life more difficult, dangerous, and expensive for working families. His allegiances are clear. They are not to working people, but to himself. Just yesterday, we held a press conference outside the Trump building on Wall Street to raise alarms about the disastrous impacts of Trump's tariffs. While the mayor failed to stand up for our city and New Yorkers, this council made our voices heard. These tariffs would constitute the largest tax hike in over 50 years, hiking the prices of common goods and harming small businesses, working families, and everyday New Yorkers and Americans. Our economy was on a steady course to recovery, but this tariff plan has threatened our trajectory and unnecessarily hurt our economy. While the president paused many tariffs for 90 days, the administration must stop sabotaging our city and national economy. As the council laid out in our preliminary budget response last week, there is already some risk from naturally occurring economic uncertainty. But the most significant risk to our economy is now the unnecessary volatility caused by the Trump administration's actions. The council's budget response identified a $1.9 billion to preserve for new needs and budgetary risks, including the direct attacks by Trump on our city's budget. But let me be clear, our city and other local and state governments across the country can do only but so much to blunt the most devastating consequences of Trump-inflicted damage to our economy. And this is on top of Trump and his allies coming after Americans' health care, food assistance, jobs, housing, and retirement funds, while raising prices on essential goods. Trump's allies in the New York congressional delegation have an obligation to put the people of New York first. New Yorkers deserve better. Now let's dive right into our stated agenda. First, we'll vote on the following finance items. Preconsidered resolution sponsored by Councilmember Justin Brannan, establishing a new 40-year Article 11 tax exemption for one lot in Councilmember Rita Joseph's district. Preconsidered resolution also sponsored by Councilmember Brannan, establishing a new 40-year Article 11 tax exemption for one lot in Councilmember Althea Stevens' district. Next, we'll vote on the following appointments. Resolution 820, sponsored by Councilmember Keith Powers, would approve the appointment by the Council of Lauren Stossel as a member of the New York City Board of of Corrections. Resolution 821, also sponsored by Councilmember Powers, would designate Patricia Marthone for appointment by the mayor as a director of the New York City Health and Hospitals Corporation. An appointment by Public Advocate Jumaane Williams of Leah S. Goodrich as a member of the New York City Planning Commission, and a preconsidered resolution approving Mark Landis to the Office of Commissioner of Elections of the Board of Elections. Today we'll also vote on the following pieces of resolutions. Resolution 333A, sponsored by Public Advocate Jumaane Williams, calls on the New York State Legislature to pass and the New York State Governor to sign S28A 106, which would eliminate the sub-minimum wage for employees based on their disability or age. Resolution 59A, sponsored by Majority Whip Sylvina Brooks Powers, would call on the MTA to conduct a comprehensive environmental impact study on the viability of the proposed Queens Link project. Resolution 187, sponsored by Councilmember Kevin Riley, would call on the MTA to conduct a comprehensive environmental impact study for the proposed Gun Hill Road electric bus depot charging facility. Resolution 729, for which I am the lead sponsor, would condemn President Trump's targeting of diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, programs and policies at the federal level, and express support for such programs and policies at the city and state level. Putting an end to DEI programs and policies at the federal level can negatively impact everyone by undermining diversity that benefits all while blocking opportunities for those historically denied them. Our diversity is one of our greatest strengths. The systemic attack on diversity by Donald Trump and his allies are trying to turn back the clock on progress in our country. They want to take away opportunity from those without their inherited wealth and privilege. In fact, it's clear from their actions that they want to return this country to the status quo before the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s. They are dismantling DEI and using it as an excuse to attack programs and opportunities for all working families. It is morally reprehensible, and no one should be fooled by this scam. They're trying to take away funding for our children's education and the services that all American families need. It is imperative that our city stands up for New Yorkers and our city's values. We cannot allow this fraud to divide us when the attack is on us all. Anti-discrimination protections help us build towards the just and equitable future that we all deserve. Next, we will all vote. We will vote on Resolution 836 that I'm sponsoring to authorize my ability as Speaker to commence legal action on behalf of the Council to defend against the Adams administration's violation of local law in collusion with the Trump administration and attacks by the Trump administration against the City of New York. The chaos created by the Trump administration taking money from the city's bank accounts, violating constitutional rights, and advancing its extreme deportation agenda has negatively impacted our city. Fear has permeated communities, undermining the safety of our neighborhoods and small businesses. Trump has shown a willingness to engage in full-on assaults of our city's residents, budget, independence, and values. This mayor has been compromised into being complicit. His administration's latest executive order inviting ICE onto Rikers Island is the latest example. This will make New York City less safe, with New Yorkers fearful of seeking help from our police department. Let's be clear, this is about the mayor fulfilling his end of the bargain to Trump, selling out New Yorkers in exchange for the dismissal of his federal corruption case. As stated by Judge Ho, quote, "Everything here smacks of a bargain, dismissal of the indictment in exchange for immigration policy concessions," end quote. This is the result of promises made becoming promises kept, and the mayor putting his personal interests and Trump's extreme agenda above our cities and New Yorkers. It is a Council's responsibility to stand up for New Yorkers, and we intend to continue doing so. Today, we will also vote on the following pieces of legislation. Introduction 671A, sponsored by Councilmember Carmen De La Rosa, would authorize the Department of Citywide Administrative Services, or DCAS, to waive the civil service examination fee for high school students in New York City and for individuals who are first-time applicants. I invite Councilmember De La Rosa to the podium to discuss her legislation.
Thank you. Thank you, Speaker Adams and colleagues, for your support and attention to this important piece of legislation. As chair of the Committee on Civil Service and Labor, we have been tracking and sounding the alarm on the vacancy rates across our city agencies. This past fall, we again examined the state of the city's workforce, and the vacancy rates in the double digits still plague some of our most critical city agencies, such as the Citywide Administrative Services, Finance, Environmental Protection, Housing Preservation and Development. The Council has worked in the past few 2 budget cycles to restore the mayoral administration's cuts and advocating for additional funding to hire and retain personnel. Yet high attrition levels, pegs, cuts, and a 2-for-1 hiring rule continue to dampen the progress of staffing our agencies are ultimately impacting the delivery of services for New Yorkers everywhere. A near 5% vacancy rate across the board remains today, translating in over 15,000 empty desks, unanswered phone calls, and redistribution of responsibilities of an already overworked and overburdened municipal workforce. The hiring processes are tedious and costly, as many who are looking for work today have experienced. Part of the pathway to civil service can include the civil service exam, which is required for 80% of city government positions. It is unthinkable that as we try so hard to staff our agencies and hire to fill the gaps in our workforce, there remains financial barriers that can make hiring unfeasible and inequitable. Fees for exams can range from $40 to $101, and that's just the cost of entry. Exam takers can expect to incur other hidden costs such as study materials, transportation, interviews, etc. That is before they've secured a job. Inaccessible fees should not deter high school students or new applicants from seeking civil service careers. That is why the Council is passing Intro 671, which would authorize DCAS to waive civil service exam fees for individuals who are enrolled at any public, private, or charter high school in New York City, or who are first-time applicants. Intro 671 says, we want you to work for our city. We are optimistic about Intro 671's positive outcomes and a fairer, more equitable application process for future civil servants who are urgently needed in our city. We need the talent of the New York City workforce to be strong, and Intro 671 will be a foot in the door for those workers. Thank you so much to the Council and to Speaker Adams for her leadership on this issue. Thank you.
Next, we will vote on a pair of bills to streamline tree maintenance. Introduction 800A, sponsored by Councilmember Natasha Williams, would require the Department of Parks and Recreation to develop criteria by which they prioritize tree maintenance. The Parks Department would also be required to post a description of the criteria used to prioritize tree maintenance on its website. And Introduction 978A, also sponsored by Councilmember Williams, would require the 311 Customer Service Center in coordination with the Parks Department to provide 311 customers who submit tree pruning related requests with certain information, including links to relevant maps and information about a program to train and certify volunteers in tree pruning. I invite Councilmember Williams to the podium to discuss her legislation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And just a quick fun story. When I was first running for office, people would ask, what are some of the top issues in your community? And I would say trees. And people would laugh because, of course, there's tons of issues in our city, but trees are certainly one. So I'm really excited to pass this package of bills because this is really not about overcomplicating the process, but about making government work for the better. When a tree falls or when limbs are damaged, people deserve to know why the Parks Department responds to certain calls first. Is it safety, proximity to a building or a home, or likelihood of harm? Now all of this information will be public. We are closing the loop on communication because too often residents submit a 311 request, I know you all love 311, and feel like it disappears into a black hole. Now they'll get the resources right away, maps, pruning schedules, and even volunteer opportunities. This is a win for transparency and a win for accountability, and more importantly, a win for our neighborhoods. Trees are essential to the city's infrastructure, but unlike roads or sewers, New Yorkers often have no idea when or how they'll be maintained. Trees offer real benefits like shade, beauty, stormwater management, and cleaner air, but they can also cause very real problems when neglected. Hanging limbs after storms, sidewalk damage from roots, fallen branches on cars or property, or obstructive views or overgrowth. Homeowners often bear the burden of unclear communication. They do not know who's responsible. They don't know when the city is coming, and they do not know what to do if a tree near their home is damaged. These bills are about clarity. They don't just make the Parks Department process better, they empower our residents to understand it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll also vote on several bills that will strengthen transparency and oversight of the NYPD's use of technology. Introduction 168A, sponsored by Majority Leader Amanda Farias, would require that the NYPD, upon request, provide the Department of Investigation with an itemized list of all surveillance technologies currently used by the department and to provide information on all data access and retention policies for data collected by such technologies. The legislation also requires the NYPD to provide DOI with semi-annual updates on all newly acquired or discontinued surveillance technologies. I invite Majority Leader Farias to discuss her legislation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today we are passing a critical legislative package that builds on and it strengthens the original Post Act. This package includes 3 bills, Intro 233, 480, and my legislation, Intro 168. Together, these bills advance our commitment to transparency, accountability, and civil liberties in the face of a rapidly evolving surveillance technologies. Intro 168 specifically is about restoring trust through transparency and ensuring the modern policing technologies are held to modern standards of oversight. When the City Council passed the original Post Act in 2020, we took an important first step towards public accountability. But we quickly saw that the limits of that law particularly. The most glaring limit is that the Department of Investigation couldn't complete a full audit due to a lack of access to the NYPD's data. That's why I introduced 168 to close those loopholes and give oversight agencies the tools they need to increase transparency. My bill requires the NYPD to provide the Department of Investigation with a detailed, itemized list of every surveillance technology it uses, including what the technology does, what data is collected, and which department controls that data. It also mandates that the NYPD provide their access and retention policies in use by the department, and any access and retention policies included in the department's contracts with every vendor and department procedures surveillance technologies for. And most importantly, this is not just a one-time check-in. The NYPD must report to DOI on a semi-annual basis so we have continuous, up-to-date transparency. Intro 168 builds on the original intent of the Post Act by making its goals more enforceable. It ensures that oversight keeps pace with the evolving use of surveillance tools so that all communities, especially Black and Brown communities, are protected through transparency and accountability. This legislation isn't anti-technology or anti-safety. It's about aligning our values with our systems. It's about ensuring New Yorkers know how surveillance is being used, who has access to their data, and what protections are in place. Transparency is not optional. It's foundational to public trust. Furthermore, it is a public good that will cost the New York taxpayers $0 to implement, as both the mayoral and city council fiscal impact reports concluded that this bill will have no price tag. I'm proud to lead on Intro 168 and honored to see it pass alongside the broader Post-Act expansion package. Together, we are making New York City a national leader in surveillance oversight. Thank you to Speaker Adams, my colleagues in the Council, DOI, and NYPD for working with us on these amendments and all the advocates who pushed to make this possible.
Thank you. Introduction 223A, sponsored by Councilmember Crystal Hudson, would require the NYPD to publish on its website a written policy that establishes procedures and regulations for the department's use of facial recognition technologies. This legislation would also require the NYPD to conduct annual audits of the department's use of facial recognition technology, share their findings with the Department of Investigation, and post them on the department's website. I now invite Councilmember Hudson up to the podium to discuss Crystal's fine. To the podium to discuss her legislation.
Thank you.
Where should
Got something to say?
Crystal has a stage of her own.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Madam Speaker. Today, this body is voting on Intro 233 as part of a package of bills introduced to strengthen the Post Act and enhance transparency surrounding the NYPD's use of surveillance technology during investigations. The use of facial recognition technology is growing rapidly in police departments across the country. Given that the NYPD is the highest funded police force in the nation, it's no surprise that New York City is among the leading users of facial recognition as a surveillance tool. However, the use of this technology in policing raises raises serious concerns, from wrongful arrests due to inaccuracies in the software of the broader normalization of increased surveillance and the erosion of privacy rights. These harms are not felt equally. They disproportionately impact the communities most affected by over-policing, particularly Black and brown men. As technologies evolve, government has an obligation to ensure they don't step on our civil liberties. Intro 233 requires the NYPD to develop and publish a clear policy outlining the department's procedures and regulations for the use of facial recognition technology. This policy must then be published on the department's website, making it easily accessible for all New Yorkers to understand their right to safeguard their privacy and better understand how the NYPD is using surveillance technology. Additionally, Intro 233 promotes greater transparency by requiring the NYPD to conduct regular audits of its use of facial recognition technology. This bill is about increasing transparency, holding the NYPD accountable, and protecting the privacy and civil liberties of all New Yorkers. I look forward to the Council taking this crucial step to protect our constituents from departmental overreach and to ensure transparency, accountability, and the protection of privacy rights for all New Yorkers by voting yes on Intro 233. Thank you. Get this out of here, right? You want it? Oh.
The stage is movable. You can, anybody. And Introduction 480A, sponsored by Councilmember Julie Won, would update language in the existing Public Oversight of Surveillance Technology, or the POST Act, to require the NYPD to publish impact and use policies for each individual surveillance technology it uses and make clear which entities use the data gathered from their technologies, how the data is protected, and the potential impacts on these surveillance technologies. I will invite Councilmember Julie Won up after I note that her next bill is a part of a package of legislation that stems from my 2024 State of the City. The first 5-year Streets Master Plan was due in December 2021, and since then, the city has consistently fallen short on its milestones, including the miles of protected bus and bike lanes required to be built each year. The council has consistently pressed DOT to provide updates on their progress, but they have been unwilling to do so. Today's legislation will advance greater transparency on the status of projects that contribute to the Streets Master Plan to promote accountability. Introduction 1114A, also sponsored by Councilmember Won, would require DOT to maintain a capital tracker for its projects, updated 3 times a year with more granular data about each of its projects. This tracker will provide greater transparency into DOT's capital planning process than is currently provided by the citywide capital projects dashboard. Now I invite Councilmember Won to the podium to talk about her important bills today.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much to Speaker Adams and Majority Leader Amanda Farias and all the leadership. My name is Julie Won. I currently represent Long Island City, Sunnyside, Woodside, and Astoria. Mahmoud Khalil, Yunsa Chung, you may be wondering about the POST Act that we have just heard been spoken about, the 2 speakers before me. So there's my bill, Intro 480, as well as the 2 bills that you heard before me, and the POST Act stands for Public Oversight of Surveillance Technology. So the words that you're hearing over and over again is about transparency and accountability. We are at a time right now where our constitutional rights, our civil rights, and our personal privacy is under attack. We are seeing students completely disappear. We are seeing students who are walking home from school get taken by in plainclothes officers. We are seeing that there is direct complicity as well as our current mayor and the NYPD working together to deport students who are legally here on student visas, as well as students who are here who are permanent residents like Yunsa, who have green cards. So why does this matter? My bill 480, Intro 480, will make sure that for NYPD, when surveillance technology is used, we will have essential details from the report of how each tool functions, who has access to our data, as well as what safety risk or civil rights impacts may exist. So we are going to continue to push to make sure that through the POST Act, we require the NYPD to publish clear, separate impact and use policies for each surveillance technology, and in tandem with both Majority Leader Farias and Councilmember Hudson's bill, now we have biotechnology, biosurveillance technology, as well as all technologies itemized and understanding how these are being used. And the POST Act will also ensure that NYPD tracks how the surveillance data is shared externally with government agencies on the local, state, and federal level, such as ICE and Homeland Security. So thank you to our colleagues. We're going to continue to collaborate and continue to push as a council to safeguard from potential risks for our safety, our privacy, and diminishing of our civil rights. Next, for my bill, Intro 114. This requires that DOT create an outline as an online capital project tracker, putting an end to the era of guessing on the status of DOT projects. It is about time, I think we're too late, but it's okay, we're making progress now, to modernize DOT to have a public-facing project tracker to ensure accountability and transparency for how our taxpayer dollars are used yearly in the millions and billions of dollars. So together with Intro 1105, championed by Transportation Chair Sylvina Brooks Powers, the public will now have access to multiple tracking tools to keep DOT accountable to the public. So thank you to Councilmember Brooks Powers for your continued partnership and advocacy. So that way we really know where our taxpayer dollars are going. And now when you have a question about when your streetlights are coming in, when that speed bump is coming in, when that daylighting is coming in, we'll be able to see it online. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Introduction 1105A, sponsored by Majority Whip Sylvina Brooks Powers, would require DOT to provide a roadmap of all projects planned for that year that will contribute to the requirements of the Streets Master Plan. The department would be required to provide updates 3 times a year. Additionally, DOT would be required to provide monthly updates on the progress of projects during their construction phase. Majority Whip Brooks Powers is also sponsoring Introduction 807A that would require the New York City Emergency Management, or NYCEM, to disseminate localized emergency preparedness materials in locations that are prone to flash floods. This aims to increase public awareness on flash flood risks and to boost registration for the emergency notification system. Additionally, NYCEM would be required to develop guidance for facilitating safe evacuations before flash flood emergencies. I now invite Majority Whip Brooks Powers to the podium to discuss her important legislation.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Speaker, and my colleagues in the Council for your partnership in moving forward today's legislative agenda. As the chair of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, I am proud to sponsor 2 bills being voted on today that directly address the urgent needs of our communities. From overdue street upgrades to protecting New Yorkers from flash flooding, first, Intro 1105 takes on the long-standing issue of transparency and accountability in how our streets are redesigned. The Department of Transportation has consistently fallen behind on its legally mandated streets master plan goals, reaching less than half of the required new bus lane mileage in 2024 alone. Communities deserve more than vague timelines and piecemeal updates. This bill will require the Department of Transportation to provide detailed, frequent progress reports on capital projects, including funding, timelines, progress reports on capital projects, and community board engagement. Together with Intro 1114, sponsored by Councilmember Wan, it will also establish a single centralized online tracker for all DOT capital projects, giving the public one clear source for project updates across the city. Second, we must face the growing risk of climate change with clarity and urgency. Intro 807 focuses on flash flood preparedness. Too many families, especially those living in basement apartments, are at risk every time it rains. This bill requires New York City Emergency Management to do targeted, proactive outreach to residents in flood-prone areas. But just as important, the city must also identify suitable shelter locations ahead of future storms so people know where to go and how to get there before disaster strikes. Thank you to Minority Leader Ariola for her leadership and support on this bill. Whether we're improving public transit access, making our streets safer, or preparing for the next extreme weather event, this work is about equity, accountability, and public safety. So thank you again, Speaker Adams, and all of my council colleagues for standing with me in this effort to build a safer, more transparent, and more resilient New York City. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Introduction 694A, sponsored by Councilmember Sandy Nurse, the one that everybody in the news is talking about today, would create a permanent, long-term strategic planning process for establishing and maintaining a citywide public bathroom network. The relevant agencies would be required to produce a strategic planning report to be updated every 4 years with the goal of providing at least 2,120 public bathrooms by the year 2035, at least half of which would be publicly owned. It would also require the agencies to post a comprehensive online map of all public bathrooms in the city. I now invite Councilmember Nurse to discuss her important legislation.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. Today we are voting to make New York City flush with public toilets. The long-awaited and widely celebrated bipartisan bathroom bill will create the first citywide public bathroom network. By 2035, we'll have a network of over 2,100 public toilets, more than doubling what we have now. Every single person walking around New York City should be free to pee in a private, clean, functioning bathroom. No one should have to experience the humiliation or stress of having to relieve themselves out on the street. New York City has 8.3 million residents, but just over 1,000 public bathrooms. That is one toilet for every 7,000 people. That is absurd. We can do better. The consequences of the failure to plan for more public toilets are thousands of predominantly Black and brown New Yorkers getting criminal and civil summonses, tickets, and fines simply for having a bladder or an intestine. 34 years ago, 4 homeless men filed a lawsuit against the city demanding safe and better access to public toilets. Since then, our city has grown, our city budget has grown, but somehow we have not managed to address this issue. Through Intro 694, for the first time, our city agencies will not only have to actually come up with a plan to maintain and expand a citywide public bathroom network, but they'll have to plan every 4 years. Right now, we don't have a plan. We don't have a strategy. We have a hodgepodge of agency-specific processes that create a disjointed, stunted, and some might call foul approach. The bill was developed out of the Free to Pee Coalition. Those original 4 men who sued the city inspired a diverse coalition of menstruators, pregnant people, parents, caregivers, homeless people, older people, and workers, like reporters, who came together to demand our city plan for this basic human need. I want to acknowledge and thank the people who worked really hard on this bill. Ryan Hickey from my team who's here, who also used to work for Picture the Homeless, the bill drafters Jessica Boulay and Jayar Siganapathy, my team comms director Patricia Santana, and all the organizers in the coalition. Thank you also to Councilmember Rita Joseph for her work advancing public bathroom legislation that this bill builds on. And thank you, of course, to Speaker Adams. I'm very excited to vote on this bill.
Thank you. And that concludes our stated agenda. And with that, we will take on topic questions first. We're going to do, I'm just kidding, first dibs on all those performers in the Inner Circle performance the other night. You all rocked. Just saying, just saying. Okay.
Thank you. On topic, only one question and one follow-up. We will start with that.
So on the council's budget response, City Council and the Mayor's Office are bearing part on the DOE budget. The council wants $800 million more. How are negotiations going on that? The mayor yesterday announced hiring 3,700 teachers, but hasn't yet said how he'll pay for them. Is that part of the negotiation?
Well, thank you for the question. Negotiations are ongoing. The new DOE proposal is still new, so we're still working through that in negotiations. Whenever we can see more teachers brought on board, that is a good thing as far as we're concerned in the council. And negotiations are ongoing, so we're going to see things change by day to day, moment to moment, so we're going to keep on plugging along. We all want the best for our children and for this department, and we're going to keep on working through negotiations to get there.
Thank you. Hallie, that was actually off topic. That's my bad.
I let it go. She was in the weren't you in the performance? No. Oh,
She talked about it at the beginning.
Yeah, on topic is
You're fine.
agenda. That's my mistake. I take the blame, but we're going to do
fine.
on topic. Go ahead.
On the Rikers resolution, the law has this carve out where the mayor can use an executive order to allow this Office of Federal Agents who are not doing specifically civil immigration enforcement. Randy Mastro talked about how the goal is not civil immigration enforcement and how they're going to try to crack down on transnational gangs. Can you explain sort of what your concerns are about having ICE and other federal agents there in this current political climate?
Sure. Well, first of all, when we look at this executive order, we have to take a good look at this. The executive order, make no mistake about it, looks like it was brought about because of the relationship that the mayor has with the Trump administration. Randy Mastro's response when asked a certain question was, "Trust me," and our response is, we don't trust the Trump administration, and this is where this is coming from. This is where the precepts are coming from, the Trump administration. So how are we ever supposed to trust the real effect and what will happen as a result of ICE being brought on to Rikers? We're going to look at this because the executive order completely violates the statutory city law. So we're going to do that also. But as far as the long term, we don't trust the Trump administration to do anything right by New York. Why would we possibly trust them to get this right with ICE?
Oh, I was just going to add, Randy Mastro was also talking about the memorandum of understanding that he's working out with federal agencies. Has this come up with you guys? Are you expecting to see a copy of it?
Yeah, I know nothing of it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think just going off of what Simon just asked, I guess how specifically does the executive order violate the 2014 law?
We're taking a look at all of this right now. The 2014 law is very, very specific. We're taking a look at the authorization of the first deputy mayor to actually sign the executive order in the first place, and then comes everything else that follows it. So we are taking a strong look. Once we make our determinations of what all of this means, we're going to let you know.
And then wait, on the conflict of interest argument that's mentioned in the resolution, is that going to be the main basis for a lawsuit?
We're not really looking at a lawsuit per se right now, but we're at the very beginning of this, so follow us. We're gonna let you know as things come forward over the next few days. Yeah.
Hi, I just want to follow up on that comment. You're not really looking at a lawsuit right now. Is that not your intention?
Well, our intention is, I'm saying at this very moment, our intention is, of course, to legally follow through the process. So the answer to your question is yes. Our intention is to legally follow through the process with our resolution and going through this executive order to determine its legality.
And was it unlawful for Mastro to sign off on this and operate, as he said, independently from?
Again, this is all a part of what we're taking a look at right now, this executive order and the statutory law itself. Whether or not the sign-off is actually a legal sign-off is something yet to be determined.
Yeah, just switching gears a bit to the intro 1105 and intro 1114 from Councilmember Brooks Powers and 1. My questions are for them. Why did you both feel the need to create new trackers, and what specifically about DOT current project tracker and citywide capital project tracker wasn't cutting it? Like, are these two bills motivated by specific experiences with the DOT, with not being able to get info from them?
Sure. So if you've been following our hearings, there's been a lot of frustration from myself and the body in terms of DOT's lack of meeting the legally mandated requirements, but also the lack of transparency in it all. And so if you go back a few hearings on the streets plan, the commissioner said, well, it's only due once a year in February. If you want us to give more, then we should have it more frequently. So we met him there.
Good answer.
Additionally, any sort of public-facing transparency interface should be easily accessible to the public. Currently, the DEC tracker is not something that a regular constituent can go online and it's not intuitive. You wouldn't just look at it and be like, I know what I'm looking for. Just like how the Parks Department has a Parks Capital Project tracker that is very user-friendly and easy to navigate, we want to make sure that there is a public-facing tracker meant for public use, specifically for DOT projects where people can easily track and keep us as elected officials, as well as the agency itself, accountable for projects that we are pouring taxpayer dollars into on a yearly basis.
Just one follow-up. How will the two trackers interact? Do you have a sense of like how many of the streets plan projects are capital projects also? Like why two trackers?
It will be working together, and all of the it's going to be a single tracker that has the streets plan in it. So that's how you'll be tracking it.
Okay, so it's not two separate pages on site, it will be all together?
Yes.
So the two bills are going to build on one another, but the streets plan aspect of it allows us to get more granular in terms of, for example, the bus goals that are set forth in the law that are not being met. It'll allow us to be more granular in that way. But Councilmember Wan's bill is looking holistically on capital projects in DOT as well.
Okay, but it will be on one
And integrated.
Yes, it'll all be together, yes.
One-stop shop.
I also have questions about that. Ydanis Rodriguez responded to this bill today, basically suggesting that it was disingenuous because oftentimes it's council members themselves who block DOT's ability to put in bus and bike lanes, that there are council members who oppose these things in their district, and he suggested maybe that the council needs to do more to help DOT in other ways, and also with funding as well.
That's an interesting perspective, to say the least. I will say that the council has continued to try to work with DOT to meet those goals, which is why we have continued to hold hearings to understand why is the agency unable to meet the goals. The agency is responsible for implementing this law. Like, we're the legislative body, so to put the onus on us, I think, is irresponsible of the commissioner. DOT continues to take on massive projects, and at any given point in the hearings, you may hear sometimes it's because of lack of staffing or lack of other resources, and then sometimes it'll be because of the council members. I think if the department works in partnership, in true partnership with the council, we would see a lot more progress. But this bill is not to be adversarial. It's to try and get a greater line of sight to understand, do these goals make sense for this agency? Can they truly meet these goals? You understand? And so that's what we've been trying to get to in the hearings. But unfortunately, we've been met with either no real answer or, just a veil over what is really, where we're trying to go with this. So, again, the council is here to work with DOT to ensure that they are fulfilling their legally required mandate with this law. And that is the premise of this bill and nothing more.
Is there consideration, go ahead, sorry.
The chair is much more polite than I am. So for Commissioner Rodriguez to be a former council member and to say that in itself is disingenuous. He knows very well no council member votes on where a bike lane is placed or where a rapid bus lane is going to be placed. That only goes through an advisory vote by the community board. The council never votes on that. Whether there is politics involved or not, it is their responsibility to take their capital plan and implement it. So let's take an example of the South Outer Roadway and the Queensboro Bridge. That is a fully funded capital project that has political support on every single side of the bridge, on every level of government, yet they are still unable to open it. So there is always excuses on why they miss their deadlines on large capital projects that are fully funded, that they have political support for, yet to point to other projects saying, oh, well, you know, there's projects that are being held up by the council member. That in itself is a disingenuous statement. This tracker is going to keep accountable both the agency and every elected official so that anyone in the public can look up every single project and know exactly where it is, whether it's in procurement, whether it's in construction, or whatever may be holding it up. And this will keep both of us accountable for any disingenuous statements that are made publicly.
Is there any thought to changing it in the next 5-year plan, maybe setting the bar a little bit lower?
So right now, there's not been any real discussion around that. But again, privately and publicly, we continue to ask the department, are these goals truly achievable? And I do want to add on to Councilmember Juan, because she raised an important point in terms of what our role is versus the department. What we have noticed is that where the department's priorities are, they're getting near to almost complete on those goals. So when you look at the bike lane goals, they are much further along than the bus lane goals. And I think that that's concerning in light of us having congestion pricing right now and understanding that communities like the one that I represent rely on buses to be able to get into the city or other parts of the borough, and that has not been prioritized. So again, it has not been any solid conversations, but we are trying to understand, do these goals make sense? Because if not, then we should revisit it.
Regarding ICE at Rikers, local law 228 of 2017 requires quarterly disclosure of all immigration enforcement contacts between federal enforcers and the city. Is it your understanding that every time an ICE official contacts an inmate or detainee at Rikers, that would need to be disclosed? Or what's your understanding of how that all will function in light of ICE back at Rikers?
Yeah, I believe I would have to take a closer look at that particular perspective, but I would think that these movements of ICE and contacts would be documented somewhere, and the council should have full view of that.
And regarding the bathrooms, why is it so hard to build a bathroom in New York? And what are you going to do to prevent, or what is contemplated will be done to prevent illegal activity, et cetera?
So bathrooms are expensive. For a number of reasons. But for example, a park bathroom with a woman and a man, separate areas, brick and mortar is almost like $3 to $5 million. It takes about 5 years to build. There are new models out there. There are new ways that other cities are achieving the goals of a bigger bathroom network, and we're just starting to get on board with that. I have a modular unit in my district called the Portland Loo. It's the first one in Brooklyn. It cost just under $1 million, and it took just under a year to build. We should be aggressively pursuing options like that. And the other part, what was the other part of your question?
Antisocial or
yeah, I mean, listen, parks and every single agency needs to do better to maintain all of our public spaces, our plazas, our parks, our bathrooms, our trash. I mean, everything needs to be better invested in. We need more capacity. That's why legislation like Councilmember De La Rosa's is so important. We need more people in the workforce, and we need the resources to hire people. We're a growing city. We're 8.8 now, I heard this morning, 8.8 million people. We're going to grow. We need to put the resources to maintain our public spaces so that we can enjoy spending time outside, and that includes places to use the bathroom.
Do you envision like a matron or something? Like who would make sure that there's not any social behavior?
We're going to move on the list.
On the Rikers, the mayor is recusing himself. Doesn't that raise the question of whether there are other policy issues, budgetary issues, that the mayor should also be recusing himself? If he is recusing himself on this issue because of a perceived or existing conflict of interest, what's to prevent him from recusing himself on, let's say, funding migrant shelters, funding immigration programs?
You know, Liz, that remains to be seen. But what I will say is that there is no question that I will always stand firm to protect New Yorkers, even if the mayor refuses to do so. He's clearly placed his own interests first. That's obvious, and those of, obviously, the Trump administration as well, above the safety of our city and the people. And we know that New Yorkers deserve better. What else he may recuse himself of in the future, that remains to be seen.
But doesn't this now open it up? It's a slippery slope. Couldn't you as the council now say, well, you've already set a precedent that you are going to recuse yourself in this one instance. Going forward, if he makes other decisions regarding immigration policy, couldn't you then step up and say, what's to prevent, you should recuse yourself?
Well, we're gonna cross that bridge when we get to it, but I certainly hear your question loud and clear, and it is something that we have taken note of. Mm-hmm. We are off topic. We're way off topic, aren't we? I think this is the last question, though.
All right. And also regarding the ICE executive order, reading through the resolution, it seems like it would give you, the Speaker, the authority to not only potentially sue the Adams administration, but also potentially the Trump administration. Is that a correct interpretation? And what could that look like? Could you kind of draw the distinction between them?
Sure. It is, you're correct. This resolution certainly does that. And it is, again, for the protection of New Yorkers. We've seen the destruction and the chaos already as far as the Trump administration is concerned, and the harm that it is already, wreaking on New Yorkers. We can go down the list again, but we did that yesterday when we did the rally around the tariffs. Likewise, the mayoral administration and the apparent partnership with this destructive administration. So yes, you're interpreting that correctly. Yeah. Thank you all.
Just comment on that specifically. He did tweet this morning that he was looking into some sort of order to take all funding away from sanctuary cities. Was that on your mind?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, colleagues.
Thank you, Speaker.
Good work.
Yay.